Hi, it's Rebecca. I'm here today to talk to you about my fountain pen challenge for 2025. In 2023 and 2024, I wasn't feeling the love for my fountain pens like I have in the past or like I am right now, and just kind of lost the excitement because I was doing a no-buy. I broke it for one pen, but for the most part, for 21 months, I bought no inks and one pen. And when you don't have anything new coming in, you don't have that anticipation, the excitement of something coming. And it turns out the anticipation, the excitement of having something coming in the mail is important to me, as is a recency bias. My favorite pen is almost always the most recent pen I have received. My favorite ink is almost always the most recent ink I have received. If I'm struggling to decide between favorite inks, it's because I have 5 new inks. And I'm struggling to decide which among them I like the most. So recency bias is a problem I have to deal with. And the anticipation of shopping, I know there's a word for it, I just can't remember it right now. It'll come to me tonight when I sleep. So yeah, I like new pens, I cannot lie. Now that song is in my head. I guess what it comes down to is I need a challenge that makes me appreciate what I already have. And some of you might be in the same boat as me, need to focus more on what you have than on what you can acquire. My husband and I are retired now. I don't have the money to go out and buy the latest and the greatest anymore. My income is a lot smaller than it used to be, and shopping for pens is a no-no. Shopping for inks is an occasional thing that can happen, but really shouldn't happen in the depths of Canadian winter. So what I've done is I've given myself pen and ink classification challenges to meet each month for 2025. It starts with my Galen leather pen block. It is a 13 pen block. It has 13 holes in it. And because it holds 13 pens, my maximum monthly allowance over the course of a month is going to be 13 pens. I don't have to start with 13. I don't have to end with 13. I don't have to have 13 the entire time. But my maximum allowable is 13 at any time. So they have to fit in my Galen pen block, which sits on my desk. The reason they have to fit in there and not just sit loose on my desk is my cat is an asshole. And any pen that is loose on the desk gets knocked off and tucked under furniture to never be seen again, with the dust mice or dust buffalo in our house. So 13 pens. I'll go through sorry, that's Possum. She's drinking. She's right next to me. And I don't know how to edit that out. I apologize for the loud slurping. So my first pen classification is going to be a journaling pen, and that is for in my Some Lines a Day journal. A Tomoe River, original Tomoe River paper journal. I got it 4 years ago. I've just finished, more than 4 years ago, I've just finished my 4th year. I am just finishing up my fourth year of Some Lines a Day every day in my journal. It's a Wonderland 222, 365 page. Well, it's got a few more, I think it's 368, something like that. But it's got enough that there's a page for every day of the year. And I use it every day. I write some lines a day every day. So a journaling pen, I've given myself a challenge to use one pen all year. So this pen has not been inked up yet, except to test it. I did a dip test. This is a Franklin Christoph Model 451. I got it at the initial public offering. It says IPO on it there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it does say IPO on it. It is a Model 45 that is long enough to hold a converter. Oh, I do have ink in here. I must have inked it to test it. Look at that. Well, I guess I know what ink I'm using for my first month of 2025, whatever ink is in the pen. So this has a medium number 5 nib. It is a steel nib, and it is a SIG grind, S-I-G grind by Jim Rouse. Jim Rouse is no longer with us. He passed away 5 or 6 years ago, maybe less than that. And he did a great job. It's a fantastic nib, and I've decided to commit an entire year to this pen, this nib, in my journal. My next classification is a colorful pen. I love color, and I want a colorful pen in my collection at all times. Then a neutral pen. I have a lot of neutral inks, a lot of grays, a lot of beiges. I need a neutral pen in which I can use neutral inks. Then a classic pen. I have some really classic pens in my collection, and I don't really reach for them. So I'm challenging myself to use a classic pen every month. It doesn't have to be a different classic pen every month. I don't have 12 classic pens, but I have enough classic pens that I can give them each 2 or 3 tries, 2 or 3 months of the year. Then a pocket pen. I adore pocket pens. I have quite a few, so I want to use a pocket pen every month. Next is a travel safe pen or a wild card. If I'm traveling during the course of the month, and I know I'm going to be traveling, I will choose a travel safe pen. For example, an eyedropper by Opus 88 that has a shut-off valve that allows me to prevent the ink from traveling down into the nib unit and spilling if the aircraft pressure gets too much. So a travel safe pen or a wild card. Wild card being whatever I want it to be. A knock-around pen. A knock-around pen is going to be a more affordable pen, one that I can throw in my pocket or in my purse or in my bag and carry with me. So every month there's going to be one pen. Oh, I am so sorry. That was my puppy. She just totally rammed into me and I bumped the table. She's an English Mastiff, if you're wondering how a puppy made me bump the table. So she's 8 months old, but she's 88 pounds. She's rather large. So a knock-around pen for, casual use. And then we get into the nibs. I want to, at all times, have an extra fine nib, a fine nib, a medium nib, a broad nib, a stub style nib, stub SIG or CSI nib, and an architect or long knife nib. An architect is going to be a challenge for me because I have a number of architects, but I only like the one that's on a medium pen. The others are broads and double broads. So this is going to be a challenge pen for me. Now, I have 13 classifications here. Some pens are going to meet multiple classifications. For example, this pen that I have inked right now has a stub nib and is a pocket pen and is a medium nib. So it could be this classification, or this classification. It's also a neutral pen. It could be that one too. It could be any one of these, or it could be all 4 of those if I have less pens inked. So that's how I'm classifying my pen selection. I'm forcing myself to fit each pen within one of these categories, but they're pretty open categories. And I think I should be able to get a good selection of pens going every month from those categories. So next up is my ink classifications. This is going to be more challenging and is going to involve planning. And already I have set up my spreadsheet to do advanced work on my inks for each month. So they have to fit within these pens. I can have up to 13 inks. I don't have to have all 13 inks, but if I ink a pen, the ink has to fall into one of my following classifications. The first one is coral. The first few are by color. The next few are by brand. So a coral ink. I love coral. I have more than a dozen coral inks. I've been trying to find the perfect coral. I've found it. I'm going to do a coral exploration ink video, and I will show you what, in my view, to my brain, is the perfect coral of all my corals. But I need to force myself to use a coral ink every month so as to use my inks. Next up is a green ink. I have a bunch of green inks. I have more than a dozen green inks. I have sage greens, I have golden greens, I have olive greens, I have forest greens. I need to use my green inks. I don't use them enough. I don't tend to reach for green inks lately. So I'm forcing myself to use a green ink in one of these pens. A taupe or brown ink. I have both taupes and browns. I think I have maybe 6 or 8 taupes and about the same of golden browns and warm browns. I classify my browns as either taupey or warm brown, and because it could be either a taupe or a warm brown, it can go in a variety of different pens. Yeah, I'm a matchy girl. I like my pens and my inks to match. I'm a basic bitch. Yeah. So anyway, next up is my inks by brand. Between the Kobe inks, the Kyoto Tag inks, the Sailor Manu inks, and the Sailor Yarameku inks, I have so many Sailor inks. Oh, and the Sailor Gentle inks that are discontinued. Yeah, so many Sailor inks. So I'm forcing myself to use, oh, and the Ink Studios. So many Sailor inks that I want to use a minimum of 1 a month. Same with Robert Oster. I think I have 13 or 14 of those. So I want to get them in pens and use them. Diamine inks. Again, I have a lot of diamine inks. They need to be out to play. Then we come to some challenging to me inks. Shimmer inks, more challenging to me because for years I tried putting shimmer inks in broad, double broad, and wide stub nibs and had nothing but disasters. I think it's because there was just too much shimmer across too much surface area, and so they felt draggy and unpleasant. I have since realized that the key to shimmer inks is to use them in fine or medium nibs or even extra fine nibs. So I don't put them in my gold nib pens just in case they damage the gold, but I do put them in my steel nibbed fine pens now. So I will be using a shimmer ink. I don't have a dozen shimmer inks, so I will be reusing shimmer inks. But yeah, shimmer inks is a classification for me. Then we have unsaturated inks. This is going to be super easy. I have a ton of unsaturated colors. I love unsaturated inks, or undersaturated. I love soft, muted colors, dusty colors, even bright colors that are unsaturated. Not a challenge at all. Saturated ink is more of a challenge. When I first started with this fountain pen and ink journey I'm on, I bought all highly saturated, deep, intense colors, jewel tones, dark colors. I just stopped using those inks. So by forcing myself to choose saturated ink as one of my ink classifications for each month, I will get some of those old inks out to play. A bright ink can be unsaturated or saturated. It just needs to be a bright ink, something outside of my normal realm. This could be a second coral. I have a lot of bright corals. Bright pinks, something bright and cheerful. I tend to go for moody, muted color palettes. The December, the November, the October, the September palettes. My last 4 months have been very moody and muted. So yeah, a bright ink is forcing me to get out there and enjoy my bright inks. I've bought them, I should use them. A classic ink. This is a way to force me to use one of my blues. I have bought some blue blacks. I have bought some traditional intense blues. I need to use them. And then a challenging ink. A challenging ink would be, well, a blue black. If I use something else for my classic ink. Classic inks also includes the dark reds, the burgundies, to me, and the forest greens. It's the classic, the inks you can use at work. Challenging ink is maybe forcing me to use one of my drier inks, or one of my inks that shades more than I like, or an ink that sheens because I don't really like sheening. Yeah, a challenging ink is forcing me to use some of the inks that I picked up over the years that I no longer use because they don't please me anymore. So I'm going to challenge myself to use inks that don't make me happy in a hope that some of them will start making me happy again. I bought them for a reason. I bought a bottle, not a sample, for a reason. I need to challenge myself to find that reason again. And lastly is a wild card ink. If all else fails, I can just dump it in the wild card ink category. So again, 13 ink categories for a maximum of 13 pens. So I don't have to fill every category, and some inks will fill multiple categories. It might be a diamine ink that is saturated and classic and green. So one ink could fill 4 classifications, or I could fill each of those classifications with its own ink. It depends on how many pens I want to have going at a time. Some months there will be less, some months there will be more, but I'm forcing myself to stay within these classifications in order to use my inks. That's the challenge this year, is to use my inks, to rekindle the love I had for them when I bought them. I didn't spend money on ink bottles because I thought I should have them. They appealed to me at the time, enough to spend enough to buy a full bottle. So I need to use my inks. So yeah, how are you doing your 2025? What are you doing that is going to challenge you or open up your world with inks or with fountain pens? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments, and let's make 2025 a good year for pens and inks. Thank you very much. Sorry about the dog drinking. Bye.